Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive into the world of Cleopatra. You know her, the legendary Queen of Egypt,
Yeah.
but how much of what we think we know is actually true? You sent in her Wikipedia page, so let's see what we can uncover about the real Cleopatra.
Great choice. Wikipedia, with all its quirks, can be a good starting point for a deep dive. Especially with famous figures like Cleopatra, it brings together information from tons of sources.
Okay, so like when you picture Cleopatra, you probably think Egyptian pharaoh, right?
Right.
But it turns out she wasn't Egyptian like we often assume.
Exactly. She was the last of the Ptolemaic dynasty, which was Greek. They took over Egypt after Alexander the Great, remember?
Oh, right, right. So it wasn't even her empire to protect, really, if you think about it.
Exactly. The Ptolemies were basically outsiders ruling Egypt. It makes Cleopatra's story way more complicated. And speaking of complicated, do you know she was apparently fluent in like a bunch of languages?
No kidding. How many we talking?
Well, we know for sure she spoke Greek, obviously, but get this. She also spoke Egyptian.
Wow. Was that common back then?
Not at all. Most Ptolemaic rulers wouldn't even bother. They thought it was like beneath them.
So she really broke the mold there. But why do you think she did that?
Imagine it, in a world dominated by men, especially Roman men, to have this direct line to the Egyptian people. Pure power move. It let her be seen as more than just some Roman puppet. She was a ruler in her own right.
That's brilliant. Talk about playing the long game. But before we jump too far ahead, let's set the stage a bit. Cleopatra was basically born into political chaos. Her dad, Ptolemy XII, he was run out of Egypt, right?
Yeah, it was a whole thing. Assassinations, exiles, Rome getting involved. It was messy, even for back then.
Like something out of Game of Thrones.
Right, and Cleopatra was right there in the thick of it. It's no wonder she turned out to be such a strong leader, facing all that drama so young.
Okay, so let's talk about her rise to power, because things get even more interesting. It starts with her brother, Ptolemy III. And this is where it gets a little strange for us modern folks. Sibling marriages. The Ptolemies were kind of into that, huh?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those historical things that makes you go, whoa. But in the Ptolemaic dynasty, marrying your sibling wasn't just accepted, it was pretty common. It kept the power within the family.
Wow. So Cleopatra ends up as co-ruler, but of course she's not about to play second fiddle to anyone.
Nope, not her style. And this is where Julius Caesar enters the picture. Remember, he was fighting his own civil war back in Rome.
Right, right.
Cleopatra saw an opportunity, a way to use Caesar's ambition to regain her own power. So she formed an alliance with him.
And their first meeting is legendary. Some say she had herself smuggled into the palace, wrapped up in a rug.
That's one version of the story. But like a lot of things about Cleopatra, we've got conflicting accounts. Some say it was a calculated seduction, using her charm and intelligence to win Caesar over. Who knows what really happened? But one thing's for sure, it worked.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, they formed a powerful alliance, even had a son together, Caesarion, although Caesar wasn't exactly shouting that from the rooftops.
Right. Announcing Caesarion as his heir would have caused chaos in Rome. A lot of powerful Romans were not happy about Caesar having a son with a foreign queen.
So much drama. It makes you wonder what was really going on behind the scenes. Anyway, Caesar makes Cleopatra co-ruler, this time with her younger brother, Ptolemy IV.
It's like each Ptolemy ruler gets dealt a worse hand than the last.
You know, when you put it like that, it makes you realize Cleopatra's story isn't just about her ambition. She was a woman in a man's world, facing challenges most of us can't even imagine.
Exactly, and to not only survive, but thrive in that environment, she must have had incredible strength and cunning.
Totally. And let's not forget, she spent time in Rome too, even lived in Caesar's villa. Talk about a culture shock.
She was a master of adaptation, navigating Roman politics, making alliances. It couldn't have been easy. But then, tragedy. Caesar is assassinated.
Oh, man. That changes everything.
Absolutely. A power vacuum in Rome, another civil war brewing. Not a good time to be Cleopatra.
Talk about a shakeup. With Caesar gone, who steps into the picture but Mark Antony?
Another powerful Roman general, and he was completely smitten with Cleopatra. At least that's what the sources say.
Yeah, their relationship, that's a whole other deep dive waiting to happen.
It was definitely more than just a love story, though. Antony needed Egypt's resources, and, well, Cleopatra saw a chance to secure her own position, maybe even gain more influence in Rome.
And they were not exactly low-key about it. Lavish parties, sailing the Nile in style. Talk about a power couple.
Oh, absolutely. It was a strategic display of power. Though it's worth remembering a lot of what we hear about their relationship comes from their enemies.
Right, they probably weren't sending out the most objective press releases.
Exactly. Cleopatra as a manipulative seductress, Antony completely under her spell. Classic propaganda.
Juicy gossip for the ancient world. But propaganda or not, Cleopatra and Antony, they were a force, especially when they pulled off the donations of Alexandria.
Ah, yes, the ultimate power move.
Basically, Antony's saying, hey, all these territories, they belong to Cleopatra's kids now, including Caesarion. You think that went over well with Octavian?
Not a chance. From Octavian's perspective, Antony was just handing away chunks of Roman territory to a foreign queen and her children.
Talk about a slap in the face. No wonder things escalated into a propaganda war.
Octavian went all out. Cleopatra was a scheming seductress, a witch who'd enchanted poor Antony.
Some of the stories they came up with are pretty wild. Like, remember the one about her dissolving that priceless pearl in vinegar just to win a bet?
Oh, yeah. Probably just a tall tale, but it shows how people saw her, this woman of immense wealth and power who knew how to play the game.
She was a master strategist right up until the very end, which, unfortunately for Cleopatra, involved the Battle of Actium.
A turning point in Roman history and the end of Cleopatra's reign.
Such a dramatic moment.
Mm.
Defeated, facing capture. Cleopatra and what was left of her fleet, they escaped back to Egypt. Even had her ships burned, right?
It was a desperate attempt to prevent Octavian's forces from seizing them.
She knew it was over, didn't she? That Octavian would never let her rule independently.
Cleopatra was no fool. She knew Octavian would probably parade her through the streets of Rome as a captive if he got the chance. A trophy of his victory.
So she chose to die on her own terms.
Surrounded by mystery, of course. Did she use an asp, a venomous snake? Was it poison? We still don't know for sure.
But whatever the method, the message was clear. Cleopatra would not be controlled. She died a queen.
It's why her story still fascinates us thousands of years later. Was she a tragic heroine? A victim of circumstance? Or a cunning player who just got outplayed in the end?
I mean, how do you even begin to answer that?
You look at the evidence, you weigh the different perspectives, and you draw your own conclusions.
And there's so much to unpack with Cleopatra.
Yeah.
She was Greek, ruling Egypt, a product of her time, but also someone who challenged every expectation.
She was a brilliant strategist, a skilled diplomat, and a powerful woman in a world that wasn't ready for her.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about her ambition, her political savvy, but what about how she was perceived? Was she really this great beauty that history makes her out to be?
Well, the historical sources describe her as having a certain presence, but not always in a conventionally beautiful way. They talk about her intelligence, her wit, her way of captivating an audience. It was more than just looks.
So more than just a pretty face.
Way more. Cleopatra understood that true power wasn't about how you looked, but how you used your image, your intelligence to influence others.
And what better way to control your image than with your own face on every coin?
Exactly. Her coinage was more than just money, it was political messaging. Cleopatra's way of solidifying her power and reaching her people.
So clever. But okay, this is where things get really interesting, because the Wikipedia article mentions a big debate about Cleopatra's racial background.
Right, and this is where things get tricky. We know that Ptolemaic dynasty was mostly Greek.
Right.
But there's this mystery surrounding Cleopatra's mother, and it's led to some interesting theories.
So we've got this queen, famous for ruling Egypt,
Yeah.
but we don't even know everything about her family history. Kind of wild. Could Cleopatra have had Egyptian ancestry? It's not totally out there, right?
It's a huge question mark, and historians love a good mystery. We can trace the Ptolemaic line back so far, but then, bam, her mom's side of the family is this big blank space. It makes you wonder.
Right, like, was Cleopatra trying to connect with some lost heritage? Or was she intentionally creating something new, blending Greek and Egyptian cultures?
That's what makes studying history so fascinating. We have the facts, sure, but also these gaps we get to interpret, to wonder.
It's like having one of those giant puzzles, but someone lost a few pieces along the way. You have to get creative to see the whole picture.
And that's where you, our amazing listeners, come in. We've given you the basics, stripped away some of those Hollywood myths surrounding Cleopatra, but now it's your turn. What do you think?
Exactly. Dive into the source material. Don't just take our word for it. Those ancient texts are out there, different historians' takes on Cleopatra. See what clicks for you. What was her deal? Was it pure ambition, protecting her kid's future? Or maybe she really did love Egypt, Greek heritage and all.
There's no single right answer, but that's the beauty of it, right? History isn't about memorizing dates and names. It's about the big questions, the debates. It's about forming your own conclusions.
So get out there, explore, And keep those questions coming, because with Cleopatra, the more you learn, the more fascinating she becomes.
Who knows? Maybe one of you will uncover the next big clue, the one that unlocks another piece of the Cleopatra puzzle.
And that's our deep dive into the world of Cleopatra. We hope you've enjoyed this journey as much as we have. Until next time, keep exploring.
Thank you for listening. If you love history, don't forget to subscribe to History with Bree and Peter. Join us for more fascinating stories from the past. Hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode.